You checked it again, didn't you? The message you sent, the thing you said at lunch, the expression on your colleague's face when you made that joke. You're replaying it right now, turning it over, scanning it for signs of damage. And the worst part is, you can't stop. You've tried, but your brain just keeps pulling you back. Here's the thing, though. That loop in your head isn't a flaw. It isn't anxiety in the clinical sense. It isn't low self-esteem, and it isn't something you developed because of a bad childhood or a rough social life. It's something far older than any of that. And once you understand where it actually comes from, the whole experience changes. Your brain is running a program that was written roughly 2 million years ago. Not for you, not for modern life. For a version of you that lived in a group of about 150 people deep in the African savannah, with no cities, no internet, no employers, no strangers on a train. Just those 150 people. And in that world, what those people thought of you was not a social nicety. It was survival. Full stop. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar first described this in the early 1990s. He noticed something strange about primate brains. The larger the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex social reasoning, the larger the average group size that species lived in. He mapped this across dozens of species and then turned the formula toward humans. His conclusion was striking. The human brain, based on its neocortex size alone, appears to be optimized for managing social relationships with roughly 150 individuals. This became known as Dunbar's number. But the deeper implication is the one that matters for you right now. Your brain didn't evolve to process information. It evolved, at its core, to manage people. Think about what that actually means. Every major upgrade your brain received over 2 million years of evolution wasn't primarily about solving math problems or building fire. It was about tracking who liked you, who resented you, who you could trust, who was lying, who held power, and how to position yourself inside a web of 150 relationships that determined whether you ate, whether you were protected, whether you mated, whether you survived. Your ancestors who were bad at this, who couldn't read the room, who didn't obsess over social cues, who didn't replay conversations, didn't survive long enough to leave descendants. You are the child of the warriors. Researcher Matthew Lieberman at UCLA has spent years mapping what happens inside the brain during social thinking. His work reveals something that should stop you cold. The brain's default mode network, the system that activates the moment you stop focusing on a task, the one that kicks in during idle moments, during daydreams, during the pause between one thing and the next, is almost entirely devoted to thinking about other people. Not abstract reasoning, not creativity, not planning. Social cognition. The moment your brain has nothing external to focus on, it automatically turns toward the social world. Lieberman's conclusion, laid out in his book Social, is direct. The brain treats social connection not as a luxury, but as a biological need, equivalent in urgency to food and physical pain. So when you replay that conversation, when you dissect the look someone gave you, when you lie awake running through a social interaction from 6 hours ago, you are not being irrational. You are doing exactly what the brain evolved to do. You are monitoring your standing in the group. Because for most of human history, a drop in your social standing wasn't embarrassing. It was potentially fatal. There's a structure deep inside your brain called the amygdala. You've probably heard of it in the context of fear, the flight or fight response. But here's what doesn't get said often enough. The amygdala lights up just as strongly for social threats as it does for physical ones. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger conducted a study at UCLA using a simple video game called Cyberball. Participants played a virtual ball-tossing game with what they believed were other real players. At a certain point, the other players stopped throwing the ball to them, just stopped including them. The fMRI scans showed that the brain's response to this social exclusion activated the same regions, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, that activate in response to physical pain. Social rejection and a punch in the arm. Same brain regions. Same alarm system. Your brain genuinely cannot tell the difference between being left out and being hurt. This is why you can't just decide to stop caring what people think. You're not dealing with a preference. You're dealing with an ancient biological alarm system that equates social threat with physical threat. Telling yourself to just not care is like telling your hand not to pull away from a flame. The reflex is not under direct, conscious control. Not fully. Not ever. But here's where it gets more interesting. The system that monitors what others think of you doesn't just run when you're in social situations. It runs constantly. Psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University developed a concept he called the sociometer. The idea is that self-esteem is not really about how you feel about yourself in any deep philosophical sense. It's a real-time gauge, a monitor. It continuously reads social signals and translates them into a feeling we call self-worth. When people seem to like you and include you, the gauge rises and you feel good. When people seem to withdraw or reject you, the gauge drops and you feel bad. The feeling of confidence or shame you carry around isn't a judgment about your character. It's a reading of your social data. It's your brain telling you your current standing in a group. This reframes something huge. If your self-esteem fluctuates based on how a meeting went or how a text message was received, that isn't weakness. That is the sociometer doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem isn't the system. The problem is that the system was calibrated for a world where social standing was everything, and now it's running inside a modern life where most social data is noise. Think about the scale of the mismatch. Your brain evolved to track 150 people. Today, you might receive thousands of social data points before lunch. A like on a post, a read receipt with no reply, a slightly cold tone in an email, a comment left by a stranger on something you made. Every one of these pings your sociometer. Every one of them gets processed as potentially meaningful social information. The system is overwhelmed. It never evolved for this volume. So it does what it does when overwhelmed. It escalates. It loops. It replays. It zooms in on ambiguous signals and treats them as emergencies. There is also a cognitive layer on top of all of this. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect. Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University ran a series of studies in which participants were asked to wear an embarrassing T-shirt into a room full of other people. They were convinced that almost everyone in the room would notice and remember the shirt. When researchers asked the other people in the room later, the number who actually noticed was roughly half of what the wearers predicted. Half. Your brain consistently overestimates how much attention other people are paying to you. This is not self-delusion in the negative sense. It is your monitoring system being calibrated for a world where people were paying much closer attention. In a group of 150, any deviation from normal was noticed. In a crowd of thousands or a social media platform of millions, you are essentially invisible. But the brain hasn't updated its threat model. And there is one more layer beneath even that. Psychologists call it the illusion of transparency. You feel your own internal states so intensely, your anxiety, your embarrassment, your self-consciousness, that you assume they must be visible to others. They're almost never as visible as you believe. The feeling is real. The broadcast is not. So here you are, carrying 2 million years of social survival circuitry into a world it was never designed for, running a group of 150 monitoring system inside a life that exposes you to thousands of signals a day, treating every ambiguous social cue as a potential threat because your ancestors who didn't are no longer here. That racing loop in your head after an uncomfortable interaction isn't your weakness. It's your inheritance. The question is not how to make it stop. You cannot make 2 million years of evolution stop. The question is what you do with the awareness that what you're experiencing is not personal failure. It's a design feature running in the wrong environment. And here is where the ancient truth reflects back onto the present. In that group of 150 on the savannah, the people who were most respected were not the ones who performed perfectly. They were the ones who showed up, contributed, stayed connected, and repaired the relationships that frayed. The obsession with what others thought wasn't supposed to paralyze them. It was supposed to motivate action, reconnection, honesty, repair. So the next time you catch yourself replaying that conversation, turning over that look, analyzing that response, remember what you actually are. You are the descendant of every human who cared enough about the group to lose sleep over their place in it. Your brain is doing its job. The only update it needs is the one you can give it now. The awareness that in this particular moment, you are safe, you are connected, and the group is not in danger of falling apart. You checked that message again, didn't you? Of course you did. You always will. But now you know why.